Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. Tonight, we turn the page from an exciting end of the basketball season nationally and for our local teams at North Central Missouri College. Kris, the last buzzer has sounded. It's time for some baseball. Now, this episode may turn out a bit like a Seinfeld episode. It's kind of all over the map until the end when it all ties together into a nice knot, or perhaps not. But there are likely to be obscure references, funny quotes, oddities, and some common threads running throughout the episode. Now, as we start, I love spring training talk, and we've started the season. There's always that guy that couldn't hit that's going to somehow magically hit, the guy that can't get batters out or get that third strike on people that's figured something out. What's your favorite kind of Royals spring training story that maybe worked or it just didn't work at all?
Well, I like I'm in the best shape of my life coming off of an injury, or my new batting stance is going to fix everything for a guy that hit 220 the year before. But spring training is also always fun because hope springs eternal in spring training, that you do have those dreams of the guys that are going to get it figured out and that your team is magically going to be good and make the playoffs or make this big run, or your favorite player is going to figure things out. And spring training is the time where you can have your dreams for the season. And fortunately for Royals fans last year, those dreams turned into a playoff appearance, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they turn into 100 losses. So far so good this year. We've got a lot of positives and some negatives. Maybe they'll get ironed out. But here we go with baseball season.
My best one ever, Alex Gordon. I'm going to dominate next year. No indication that was coming. Went out and did it. That was great. My two that I'm going to say were from the era when things didn't work out so good for the Royals. One was Mark Teahan was going to be our new second baseman, 6'3", 220-pound Mark Teahan at second base. That has a tie-in with later in our program. The other one was when we had the most consonants in the right side of the infield ever. Remember that team? Grudzielanek and Minkiewicz.
Yeah, the all Wheel of Fortune team. I remember.
My father-in-law came here. We watched a week of baseball games with the Royals. Never saw them win the entire week. It got off to a slow start that year. Okay, so we've got Royals, we got Cardinals, and wait just 1 minute. We've got North Central Missouri baseball Pirates who are asking for your attention.
Another national ranking pops up in North Missouri for the Pirates.
23-5. And ranked number 24 in the nation, I believe, last time we looked, experiencing a new level of success. Now, I think I have a sound bite here. I got to cut it off before it gets a little too rowdy there, but that was the home plate celebration after the 16-inning win the other day with a home run over the right center field fence. 16 innings in the first game of a doubleheader. That game was supposed to be 7 innings, and it went 16. And I was there. I didn't have my sound on quick enough to hear the crack of the bat and go over the wall, but the run around the bases, and the team went nuts.
Nothing makes a pitching coach more nervous than going 16 innings in the first game of a doubleheader, because there may not be anybody left to pitch in the second game, maybe the shortstop.
I think that happened to Moberly because we wiped him out in the second game. So tonight, our panel features Dr. Lenny Klaver, president of North Central Missouri College, with a long background of success as a baseball coach and athletic director and player before coming to Trenton. Also joining us tonight, we welcome back former Lady Bulldog basketball coach Brian Upton, who is currently trying to coach up his financial clients so they can survive the market turmoil. He seemed quite willing to come and discuss some teams where the arrow is pointing up. Okay, that's what we want, the arrow pointing up. Brian is a baseball fan through and through, and we're happy to have him back. Of course, Kris and I never turned down the opportunity to talk baseball, so here we go. Now, tonight I'm going to start with a little background about Dr. Klaver, since he's new to our panel. Then we'll launch into some fun topics. Dr. Klaver attended Wayne State University in northeast Nebraska, played baseball in college, returned just a few years later as a young man, returned as the head baseball coach for a 13-year run, winning 226 games during his tenure, and coaching women's basketball just for 4 years, just for a side job. And Kris, we've talked about how hard it is to coach girls and boys basketball. Imagine men's baseball, women's basketball.
It'll teach you patience, I think, for sure.
So in his last season, he didn't quit the job on a downhill part. He was District 11 Coach of the Year in his last season of coaching the women's basketball team, and had built that up to where they could bring somebody in as a full-time coach for that. Left in 1996 to become Director of Athletics at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Though he had to step in as an interim head coach in his second year, he quickly stabilized his entire athletic program, hired a new coach who had success. He is now in his 9th full year as NCMC president and has overseen a 17% growth in enrollment, always a good thing.
Thank you.
Creation of a state-of-the-art satellite campus in Savannah, Missouri, and expanded program and athletic success. Dr. Klaver, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleased to join you fellas tonight.
We are having a lot of fun with this, and if you would, I want you to just give us a taste of what your background is in baseball. And obviously, it's a long run, and that's how you started your career, and then you got into this other budget stuff, fundraising stuff later.
Most fun part of my life, obviously, anything to do with baseball. From the time I played Pee Wee baseball all the way through high school and college, also had the opportunity to get a head coaching job at my alma mater at a young age of 26. Had a pretty good run there. A lot of stories to tell from those days. And then, as you mentioned, when I went to UW-Parkside, I did end up taking over the team for part of the first season when I was there due to let's just say an error by the head coach. Mm-hmm. And then was able to hire Sal Bando Jr. as our head coach. I got to know his dad. He was GM of the Brewers at that time. A terrific young man. And then Parkside went on to have some success after that as well by hiring my former assistant at Wayne State, his assistant coach, Tracy Archuleta at UW-Parkside, who went on from there to Southern Indiana to win 2 national championships. And now Tracy's the baseball coach at Indiana State.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Good Midwest roots there. And you can't go wrong when you're marching Sal Bando up to the microphone in the Milwaukee area.
No, he was obviously a star, and I remember him back from the days with the A's and the troubled A's. They won championships, but they got in fights in the clubhouse all the time. And there was Reggie.
They had Reggie stirring the drink.
Yeah, they did before he actually said he stirred the drink.
That's right. That was always hard for me to take the A's success in the early 70s because they abandoned Kansas City just as their young players were coming to the forefront. And I was like, doggone it. But luckily, we got an expansion team shortly thereafter, and my attention was focused on that. I was used to the A's being bad. They were horrible for 12 years. So let's dive into our topics. Are you guys ready? Ready to go?
100.
Topic number 1. The Royals have started. They're at 500 as we speak. Expectations are high. What are your expectations for the Royals? What do you believe is the key to another successful season? I'll start with you, Dr. Klaver.
My gosh, it was a surprise last year at how well the starting pitching was, and then how the bullpen came around at the right time, and we had some timely hitting. This year, I would say, I like the team. I'm curious to see if having India at the leadoff spot is going to make a difference, and every team goes through, pitching up and downs early in the season. But as you said, we're 500. And I just think that ability to have that solid starting staff and the bullpen to be solid. We've got some guys that can hit the ball. So I'm looking for a playoff run again.
Excellent. Brian.
Well, I'm on board with the playoff run. I actually think they got a pretty good shot at the division. And it's not that the other teams are bad, but they're all about the same. And so I think if we can get that mid to upper 80s, maybe 90 wins, that's going to be pretty close to division title. I'm curious to see how we navigate our outfield woes. You was talking about spring training stories, and Hunter Renfroe's best shape of his life. He's dropped 40 pounds, and he's this and that, and he just looks like a leaner, bad baseball player to me. So they're going to have to figure out something, and they've got some. I saw today where they put who was it on the injured list? Got hurt. They called up Drew Waters, who's been tearing it up.
Canna. They got Mark Canna.
Canna, that's it.
Right. And they just signed Nick Gordon too.
Yeah,
but we haven't seen him in a Royals uniform yet.
Right, but they called up Drew Waters today, and he's the prototypical 4A player. Just tears it up in AAA, and then has trouble in the major leagues. But especially in the outfield, if you got to contribute something, and if you're not hitting, play some defense. Well, our outfielders, at least in the corners, don't seem to contribute anywhere. So. At least Drew Waters, I think, can glove it a little bit. He's got some speed. But our starting staff, if you're getting what we're getting from Bubic and Lorenza right now, if they can have any moniker of consistency, I think our bullpen is way better than last year. The problem is we're going to have to win games 4-2, 4-1, 2-1, yeah. and that's a struggle at times.
It looks very similar to last year in a lot of ways, and we've kind of started out that way. I was going to point out that last night I thought was really an interesting dynamic where you had Schreiber closing out the game, you had Zerpa pitching early in the game, it reminded me of who we had to count on last year for 3 or 4 months. Okay.
Right.
And they were only pitching because our top 3 relievers had pitched 2 or 3 straight games.
Yep.
And they still won the game. And I thought that's great because as spot pitchers, they're more than adequate. So now they're our 4th, 5th, 6th best pitchers. Lynch coming in as our 6th best pitcher. And instead of having to be our number 1, 2, 3 with MacArthur in the back end of the bullpen, that just looks so much healthier.
Well, and those guys were all in high leverage positions last year because that's what we had. And so now at least when they come in, they didn't always succeed last year, but at least now when they come in, they've been there before. And I think that's important because you can't run out Hunter Harvey and Urseg and our new closer every night. I mean, I think they got some real potential. I think India is going to come around. And really, if you look at it, Bobby Witt and Sal, they're not often any kind of blazing start. So if we start getting some production from them and Vinny and India, I mean, I can see a team that can go on a winning streak, which is nice. 1 is luck and 2 is a coincidence. You know, it's not a streak till you get to 3 games. But I can see where this team could probably – I think they can win 5 or 6 games in a row. It'll come down to whether we can go whatever and 1 against Chicago White Sox. That'll help us in the division. So
they don't have to face Ryan every night from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So amazing how Royals fans can see things through the same lens, because what I have for my notes from what you both of you guys said, will India be a good fit at the top of the lineup? Something that the Royals really lacked last year was anybody who could get on base at more than a 300 clip in front of maybe the best hitter in baseball. Can we lean on our starting pitching like we did last year? Very good starting pitching and a lot of expectations, especially from Reagans now as the ace. Where are we going to get outfield help? Because here's our corner outfielders so far at this point in the season. 3 for 26 with 1 extra base hit with an OPS of 412 and 5 for 30 with 1 extra base hit with an OPS of 442. That's our corner outfielders. In the majors, if you're not a Gold Glover in the corner outfields, you can't be on a good team, right? You can't sustain that. So they're going to have to find something out. They didn't sign an outfielder really. They tried to make a couple trades early in the season. But I've got a positive for you that I think is going to make an impact, and his name is Jack Caglione. And I've put a lot of stock in this guy, and I think he's going to come in at some point this year, midway through the year, maybe even a little later, but he's going to be put right in the middle of that lineup, and he's going to produce, and he's going to be a lift. And if that's where we get it, great. He's not really an outfielder yet. He can DH. He can play first. I know we've got a log jam at first with Salvi and Vinny, but if that's where we need to get the help, then so be it. I know he's young, but so far, all indications are that this guy can mash and isn't afraid to be in the spotlight.
He's hitting them
Note,
deep.
that was April 9th. You made that prediction. I'll remember that day.
Okay, all right. Write it down.
Keith Law thinks he's coming up before the season's over as well, and he's usually pretty cautious about those kind of things in his review of top prospects. Man, I mean, if you see Jack Caglione in your Twitter feed or something like that, there's probably a 450 bomb coming. Click on that.
Oh, it's tremendous, and he doesn't have a lot of. I mean, his swing is so natural. I mean, I remember when Eric Hosmer was playing, and there was a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah,
not with Jack. It's just boom, and
it's a Griffey type swing. It just looks fluid.
Well, and the 2 home runs he's hit in Double-A have been on 0-2 pitches, which means he's not afraid to be aggressive with 0-2, which is good. Now, they were both mistakes from what I understand. They were kind of middle stuff, but it's going to take some seasoning. He needs to get to AAA so that he can see those borderline major league players that are throwing off speed stuff, trying more pitchers instead of throwers, and to really gauge where he's at. But boy, the ceiling is really high on that guy.
And they're not wall scrapers either, the home runs he's hitting.
No, they're out of the park.
Yeah.
And I know that first one in Tulsa, if you look around, all these guys are standing like in winter coats. I mean, it was cold that day. I mean, if you notice the people around, it wasn't like a garbage sack over somebody because it's raining and 80 degrees outside. It was cold, rainy, and so it was. I mean, the guy's impressive.
And in spring training, I know it's spring training. We always say that, but he had one with an exit velo of 115, and we don't have any other Royals that have hit a ball that hard in the entire season. And so, yeah, he can do it. We'll just see how long it takes.
I remember a guy that had a reputation. He only hit mistakes, but he hit 35 mistakes in 1985 and won a world championship called Steve Balboni.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, even if he just hits mistakes, he'll hit 25 home runs. in a full season.
And if he's using the new torpedo bat, maybe it won't.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
He does use a torpedo boat. He does use a torpedo bat.
Well, if he's in
I heard
San
that
Francisco,
today.
Maybe you need to use a torpedo boat to pick it up.
Okay, topic number 2. That's good. We're all excited about that, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds for the Royals. Topic number 2. Baseball is known for its characters, and the Royals just played a series up in Milwaukee, and I saw the tributes to Bob Uecker, the way people feel about Bob Uecker. It just made me think about baseball's characters because he's certainly one of the true characters in baseball. So if anybody's got a Bob Uecker thing, this would be the time to chime in, but then we'll go with your favorite characters. Have you got
do.
one?
When I was at UW-Parkside, Bob Lee, who was Uecker's roommate at Eau Claire in Class D ball, he has stories that you wouldn't believe, and most of them I couldn't tell on the air.
To sustain his level of, I don't know, he just seemed genuine, and he loved what he was doing, and he always had a story, and he did that for 50 years. I mean, my goodness, what a life.
And he was a broadcaster that got thrown into the national spotlight a couple reasons. He got put on a national sitcom, so more people got to hear him and see him. And then he was in one of the best baseball movies, which I think we're going to get to later, in Major League. So he had that national presence besides just being a play-by-play guy for a local team. He was one of the first to have that national presence of that. A lot of people in the country knew his voice and knew who he was. And plus the commercials. I think
He may be in the best
best
Miller Lite commercial ever. That's me down in the front row.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever hear just a bit outside, you know where it came from.
Yeah.
In 1985, my dad and I went to the 6th game of the World Series, the famous game against the Cardinals, and we literally were in the top row of the stadium. I could see the skyline behind me of Kansas City. And of course, it must be in the front row. I mean, we were in the stadium. Who cares,
So he's got one of my favorite lines ever in a baseball movie. It is in Major League, of course, and it's in the bottom of the 9th inning in the Yankees-Indians game. And the Yankees are going to bring in their closer. And he says, this kid is so mean, he threw at his own kid in a father-son game. And I love that line because I think that is Bob Uecker through and through, is that this pitcher was so mean that he threw at his own kid at a father-son game. And so he had one-liners like that all the time, whether you listen to him in his local broadcasts or in things like that. Really funny guy.
Johnny Carson. He was on Johnny Carson all the time. Okay, so favorite baseball characters. I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, well, I had several that I liked, most of them from my childhood, but Al Hrabosky was a character. Mark Fidrich, I grew up with Mark Fidrich, and he had a lot of antics around the mound. But I played a game called Dice Baseball with a friend down the street, and he had the eternal dibs on the Royals, and this is mid-'70s. And at the time, the Boston Red Sox were really good. 75 World Series will go down as the greatest World Series in my book ever. Okay, I watched every game, and I could tell you now their starting lineup because they were my Dice Baseball team. And outfield was awesome with Jim Rice and Dwight Evans and Freddie Lynn. That was his rookie year. And they had Rico Petrotelli at third base and Rick Burleson at shortstop. And they had 3 pitchers that won 17 or 18 games 3 years in a row. Rick Wise and Luis Tiant, who everybody imitated, at least on my block, everybody imitated him. And they had a guy named Bill Lee. And Bill Lee was a goofball. And his nickname was Spaceman, and there were songs written about him, and he wrote books, and he was just off the wall. And part of the reason I liked him is because he was left-handed, but he's probably the last major league pitcher to throw the eephus pitch. And he didn't call it the eephus pitch; he called it the leafus pitch, like his first name. And he was always fighting with his manager, Don Zimmer. And it got to the point where Zimmer took him out of the starting lineup, stuck him in the bullpen, didn't pitch him. I mean, it got really bad. It got bad. It was personal. Even over an off season, they've traded his favorite player, his best friend, Bernie Carbo, away, and he was going to retire. I mean, this guy was just always around controversy, and it was never mean stuff. It was just goofy stuff. And so he's my guy, and I don't really know why. I mean, there's other characters in the game that contributed something, but he was just enough of a goofball from my childhood. If you get older, I like Zach Greinke, and he was a character as well. But the Spaceman, Bill Lee, he's my guy, and he's probably nobody else's guy, but he's my guy.
Put a pin in that. That's a Seinfeld reference.
Yeah.
Okay? And you'll hear that name again at some point in this program. I'm going to go with you next.
Okay, I want to give a shout out to a fictional character, Ham Porter from The Sandlot. the catcher, who we all dreamed to be when we were growing up playing backyard baseball. But I'm going with a real person, Buck O'Neil from the Royals and Kansas City baseball. Fell in love with listening to Buck O'Neil stories when Ken Burns baseball came out. And just to listen to him talk about the Monarchs, the Negro Leagues, being on buses with the likes of Jackie Robinson and Satchel Paige, and then knowing that he was a Royals fan through and through and that he came to the games and kept score all the way up until he passed, and then his induction into the Hall of Fame. Just a great character and a great ambassador for baseball in the town that you root for baseball. So Buck O'Neil's my favorite character.
Well, not necessarily a player, but a manager, Tommy Lasorda. There's so many antics that he did and so forth, but a unique situation that I ran into is that I was at the ABCA conference. It usually occurs in January, American College Baseball Coaches Association. And Ben Hines was the Dodgers pitching coach, and he had Tommy Lasorda there with him at his booth. Ben was selling a book and a video. And I think Tommy happened to be the keynote speaker later that afternoon. So I got a chance to, it was an honor to meet both of them, and especially Tommy. And I was so excited that I bought the book, and I didn't realize until the next day that I had left my credit card there. So I'm pretty sure that's where it was because I didn't use it any other place. So I start walking up, and Tommy holds the credit card up. He says, "Kid, we had a great time on the town on you last night." and that wasn't all of that situation. Is that when I was getting ready to fly home, Tommy was down there. We both had early flights, and I got a chance to take a cab to the airport with Tommy Lasorda and talk baseball for about that 20 minutes. So that was really an honor, and he was a character through and through, as you know, but I really never was a really big Dodger fan or anything like that, but it was a thrill to have some conversation with Tommy Lasorda.
That's great.
He was one of the best dirt kickers on the plate in the planet. When he got mad and he'd argue, and he'd get out there, and he was such a little guy, and then pretty soon he'd start kicking dirt, and he was a deal.
Okay, I'm going with Leroy Satchel Paige. Okay, first of all, he was super accomplished. I mean, he's literally the first Negro League player to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame, Cooperstown. He was the 7th player to get into the American League out of the Negro Leagues. He was the first pitcher. He's the first one to win a world championship, 1948 with the Cleveland Indians. They haven't won one since, by the way. But he would barnstorm. And what I liked about him was he was really from that era where it was a show. He had a barnstorming game in the Negro Leagues where Buck Leonard kept complaining that he was scuffing baseballs. And so they finally kept looking at him, and finally they throw one out. And he told him, he goes, "You may as well have thrown them all out because they're all going to jump like that." He had a lot of confidence. Pitched at 59 years old for the A's, pitched 3 scoreless innings for Charlie Finley. And during that game, he was served coffee in a rocking chair in the bullpen by a nurse. So Charlie Finley had his own kind of thing. But here's some names of his pitches. I love this. B-ball. You guys know what the B-ball was? It's a fastball with so much zip, it supposedly moved like a bee. But what he said was, because it always be where I want it to be. Okay? And then the Bat Dodger and the Midnight Creeper. I mean, those are great names for pitches. I like a couple of his quotes. I'll close out with that. He said, "Just take the ball and throw it where you want to. Throw strikes. Home plate don't move," which is great. And then the famous one, "Don't look back. Something may be gaining on you." So he was just a bigger-than-life character who actually did great things in the game of baseball. Was probably Joe DiMaggio. A lot of people thought he was the best pitcher that they ever faced during their life. There's a lot of characters in baseball. It really lends itself to it. Our third category here is best pitch in baseball. Now, this can be literally a pitch. You could go into a pitch, or it could be a particular pitch as it was used by a particular player.
Okay, best pitch. The one that first came to mind in my generation growing up watching baseball, and then as a young adult watching baseball, was the Mariano Rivera cutter, the best reliever of all time, being able to throw one pitch and have the giant success that he did in the regular season and the postseason. But I went with another one, and that is the Greg Maddux 2-seam backdoor fastball that he got countless hundreds and hundreds of guys out on. He was a smart pitcher, and I loved Greg Maddux because he wasn't blessed with all of the athletic ability of a lot of the pitchers. Couldn't throw 100 miles an hour, but he was smarter than everybody else, knew how to pitch. If you ever are on social media or have a chance to look at a story of his best ever two-seam backdoor fastball that he got by a scuffed baseball, and I think Chipper Jones tells a story of Maddox realized he had a scuffed baseball on a ball that went maybe out of play and then came back in, and he struck a guy out on it. And just a great pitch from a great pitcher who was a smart pitcher more than the guys that can throw 100 miles an hour.
I've seen something, I don't know the particulars, but there was a particular batter, might have been.
I want to say it's Moise Alou, but I might have that wrong. But
this particular batter, he literally let him get a hit on a certain pitch in a certain situation.
Oh, right, that story too.
Knowing that 5 months later he was going to be in that same situation, the guy would be looking for it, and he had something completely different for him. I mean, amazing, setting it up over a long period of time. Great pitcher.
Can I say two?
Sure.
The first one was I had a chance to interview Tom House. If you remember Tom House, he threw the was it 714th home run, 15th home run to Hank Aaron. Anyway, I was talking to him. I said, Tom, what's the best pitch in baseball? He said, strike one. But other than that, Bert Blyleven's curveball, and he's another character too. Bert just boom over the top. That thing dropped off the table, and it was almost unhittable. And I had a chance to watch the game in Minnesota when he got his 3,000th strikeout. So that curveball was amazing to watch.
Well, you stole my thunder. Bert be home by 11. And I'm fascinated with the curveball. And Kershaw's got an incredible curveball. And I think I like it because it makes hitters look so goofy at times. And I remember whenever Mike McDougal was the Royals reliever, and I can't remember who was at the plate. It was a home game. I'm watching it on TV. They're playing the Yankees, some huge whatever. It was whatever. And he absolutely buckled his knees on strike three. And I think that's amazing. I mean, they're both professionals. But when you get somebody up there that these guys are known for whatever pitch they throw, but Kershaw's curveball, Bert Blyleven's curveball, of course, my man's Bill Lee had that Ephus pitch that was hilarious. A little story about it. He was in the 75 World Series. He started Game 7, and he was winning 3-0. Matter of fact, he was leading both games that he went out of, and they lost both those games. Tiant was 3-0 or something, and he lost both those games. But in the 6th inning, he goes to the Ephus pitch to Tony Perez, and he parked it like, I don't know, half a mile outside of the stadium, was looking for it. So it didn't always work. But that Ephus pitch is just, I don't know, it's just kind of strange. You know, Zach Greinke has a little bit of that in him too. He'll slow down and throw one up there at 68 miles an hour or something. No, you kind of got me, Dr. Klaver, on Mr. Blyleven, because he was fun to watch.
He was.
Okay, so I'm going to cover some of the same ground here because I was considering a couple of pitches. One was a submarine pitch, sinker by Dan Quisenberry, and the effect of that. And I love that, and I love his quotes about it, that he found a delivery in his flaw. This is the way he put it, instead of a flaw in his delivery. And that grass is a wonderful thing for little bugs and sinker ball pitchers. You know, what a great guy. But I picked the Ephus pitch, and I have a reason for that. First of all, it's a high arcing off-speed pitch. It's almost like a softball pitch. And according to manager Frankie Frisch, the pitch was named by outfielder Maurice Van Robeys. Robeys replied when they asked him about the pitch, he says, "Ephus ain't nothing. That's a nothing pitch." And apparently in Hebrew, the word is pronounced ephus, and it means zero. So there may have been some connection there. I'm not sure about that. But I like the personalized names, like the Leafus. But Dave LaRoche had a best name for it, Lalab. Lalab. I love that.
Yep.
And, of course, Bill Lee and Zach Greinke threw it. There's a YouTube video that you ought to check out, and it juxtaposes a 100-mile-per-hour fastball that he threw in a game, and then he threw a 51-mile-per-hour curveball, and it just buckled the guy, and Ryan Lefevre exclaims, literally as the pitch is arriving at home plate, he goes, "There you go, 51 miles per hour." So anything below that 55 level is considered with the Ephus pitch. Okay.
Can I say I'm shocked that no one said the Phil Niekro knuckleball? I thought that was coming for sure because that was
Wood or Phil Niekro
in the 70s or 80s or Tim Wakefield in the 90s. Nothing made umpires, catchers, and hitters all look silly at the same time than a really good knuckleball pitch. So that didn't get on there. So honorable mention to any knuckleballers out there.
You know, they had to use the giant glove to catch it, and they still couldn't catch it.
That's right. And the catchers hated that. So last week I went and saw a new movie, and it's called Ephus. And it's not in wide release but it's about a New England town or company team playing their last game on an old ball field before it's torn down the very next day. If you are an in-the-weeds baseball fan or just enjoy a bunch of overweight, old New England ball players cursing in their unique accent as they tease and make fun of one another playing a kid's game that they love, try to see it. There's a special appearance by none other than Bill Spaceman Lee, who just shows up out of nowhere and says, "Hey, give me the ball." He throws like 3 outs, and then they get ready to hand him the ball for the next inning, and he's not anywhere to be seen. He's gone. He has left the film.
Well, it's interesting you say that because he actually pitched when he was 65 years old for a professional team. It wasn't obviously a Major League Baseball, but he thought he still had it. And so at 65, he went and pitched part of a season. I think that's pretty incredible for somebody at 65 to go. And he was playing against young men, in some sort of oddball baseball league.
Like I said, that the image of that and that name for a movie and just that whole dynamic of a bunch of old guys just playing ball. I grew up around that in Lawson. I'd go to games and I'd just wait for somebody to break a wood bat because that was my chance. As the bat boy, I was going to get that bat and we were going to nail that thing back together. That's how I got my Harmon Killebrew bat back in the day. So a lot of fun people, a lot of fun, unique pitches and quirky things about baseball. Number 4, what's the best thing you've ever eaten at a ballpark or a stadium?
Well, it's going to be an odd answer because when I grew up in Independence. My dad and I would go to 20, 30, 40 ball games a summer. It was inexpensive to go. We weren't blessed with a lot of money, so my dad actually refused to park at Royal Stadium. He thought if you lived in Jackson County and paid taxes, you shouldn't have to pay to park. So we would literally drive up what's George Brett Boulevard, what used to be Blue Ridge Cutoff or whatever it is. There was a Tom's High Class up there. We would park our car up there, and we walk about 3/4 of a mile. So when we got to the ball field, we didn't buy anything. Okay, we snuck in peanuts, might get a soda. That was about it. Now, currently, I like the helmet full of nachos. Good. I understand that they're going to have Z-Mans there. Joe's Kansas City. They're having Z-Man there now. I'm guessing that's going to be my favorite. Haven't been to a ball game this year, but I'm guessing that's going to be my favorite. Other than that, it was, if we got some at the ball game, it was a cotton candy or a Frosty. That was about it.
Okay, mine comes from the ball fields in Lawson. It is the snow cone. Snow cone, man. You're a kid, somebody hands you that snow cone, and you just start tearing into that thing, and the paper is dripping, and the ice has no more flavor because all the liquid is drained right through the ice, and you don't care. You don't care. I mean, it is the ultimate treat, and you'd wait till the 3rd, 4th, 5th inning of a local game and get that red snow cone or purple snow cone. I don't even know what flavors those were. I mean, they might have been reminiscent of grape or cherry or something, but if I got a snow cone that day and didn't get it all over my clothes and have to explain that back home, it was a good day. Good day.
Okay, so I've had a lobster roll at Fenway. I've had the Judge Wagyu burger at Yankee Stadium. I've had the pastrami sandwich at PNC in Pittsburgh, and I've had the brisket nacho helmet. But I'm going with the classic ballpark food. That is the Dodger dog in LA. I've had a Dodger dog, something about it. You go to the ballpark, you have a hot dog, mustard and relish, sing it Alabama, just like the song Cheap Seats. So I'm going with the hot dog and more specifically the Dodger dog.
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong.
I would say the Usinger's sausage bratwurst at County Stadium, my first time there, with what they call the special stadium sauce. Maybe a little sauerkraut on it, but that was an authentic bratwurst.
Sometimes you get in trouble with food at locations because I'm kind of interested in that. So I went to Cincinnati. It's Skyline chili, right? You got to have chili. It was 97 degrees that day. I mean, I am sitting out in a sun-drenched seat eating chili and just sweating bullets and thinking, you got to do it for the game. I mean, it's what you got to do when you're there.
Got to sacrifice, yeah.
Okay, now we go to the 5th topic, and our 5th topic is favorite baseball movie. Now, baseball has so many stories, and there's a million movies about baseball. It seems to be a lot more about baseball than any other sport, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And mine is Field of Dreams. It's just I'm an Iowan, so are you in heaven? No, this is Iowa. But James Earl Jones in that movie was so good, and some of the lines, the hey, Dad, how about a catch? There's so many great lines, and it's a classic. I think every one of them that you guys name could be a favorite at any time.
Well, I had trouble. I mean, I have an odd taste in movies. Okay, I can tell you that if one of these three movies come on TV, A League of Their Own, Armageddon, or Tombstone, I stop whatever I'm doing and I watch it. If it's one of those, and they're not even related, and they're just completely different genres and everything else.
Shawshank Redemption for me.
Yeah. But one of those three. So, I mean, League of Their Own is really good. Mr. 3000 is an underrated, funny show. Sandlot, Bad News Bears, because when I was a kid, that was the movie. The movie that I ended up going with, I've only seen once, and it's Bang the Drum Slowly. And it's kind of an obscure movie, but it was kind of a popular book. And my older brother had to read it. He was in junior high, so we had to buy the book and bring it home. So I was younger. I loved to read books. And part of the reason I've only seen it once is because when you read a book and then you see the movie and the movie doesn't live up to the book, because your imagination's better when you read a book. But Bang the Drum Slowly kind of is a heartstring tugger, kind of like Brian's song with James Caan and Billy D. Williams. This Bang the Drum Slowly, Michael Moriarty. You don't know who that is. He's Hull and Pale Rider. He's
original Law and Order.
Oh yeah, he's kind of a cerebral pitcher, and Robert De Niro is a catcher, and he's just not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's their catcher, and they develop a relationship. The pitcher was an insurance salesman in the off season, and so he sold him some insurance. And he had to go to his family's home to get some papers signed, so he got to know the guy, and then he comes to find out that he's terminally ill with some sort of blood cancer, and so he takes him under his wing. Everybody on the team kind of gives him a hard time because he's kind of slow. And over time, everybody learns to respect this guy for his hard work and his dedication. And he even gets to the point where they're trying to negotiate a new contract. And he goes, it's really simple. If you trade me, whatever you do with my friend, Robert De Niro, you do for me. If you get rid of him, you can cut me. You trade him, you trade me. We're a package deal. And it was just the development of his character, his human side, from being kind of a jerk, sarcastic guy to becoming a human being through this whole movie. And anyway, it stuck with me more from the book, but it was a movie, and I did watch the movie. There's so many good ones, Sandlot's really close. There's not a whole much better than you throw like a girl. Okay, so that's one of the best lines ever. So, but Bang the Drum Slowly for me.
I'm going to go next, then I'll let Kris close us out on this one. Moneyball's my movie. Why do I love it? Well, it's baseball. It has a dad-daughter relationship. I am a total sucker for that, as you would imagine. It's an underdog and a contrarian movie all at once, and I love all those things. And it brings statistical analysis, Bill James level stuff into play, into the boardroom, into the scout room, and the conflict that comes from that. Now, I love this because I used to read Bill James stuff when it came out. I mean, I literally sat down and I would read it over 3 days, his abstract. I read it all. And I always remember he would ask great questions. And one of the questions was about Lonnie Smith, who played for the Royals. And he was called Skates for a reason because he kept falling down out in the outfield. And he made several errors, and people would say, he's a horrible outfielder. I don't know why they play him out there, blah, blah, blah. So he did an analysis of how much his errors over an entire season hurt the Royals. And it turned out they really didn't hurt the Royals at all. Most of the games were already decided one way or another. The player who he led on base did not score, something like that. And so it was blown up that he was this terrible, but he happened to be on 3 straight teams that won world championships, different teams. I think it was Atlanta, St. Louis Cardinals, and the Royals. So I love this movie. So I love when he's trying to get Scott Hatteberg on his roster, and he's talking to the scouts. And he says he can't throw and he can't field. But what can he do? And he points at Pete, and he says, get on base. Scott says, all he does is walk. And Billy Bean's character, Brad Pitt, goes, do I care if it's a walk or hit, Pete? You do not. I do not. And I love that exchange. And that really sets the tone for the movie. The other thing I like is when he's explaining that the problem that they're trying to solve with the A's organization, with the scouts, and they're all thinking, how can we replace Giambi or Johnny Damon or whatever? And he says, there are rich teams, then there are poor teams, then there's 50 feet of crap, then there's us. And he says, that's the problem, is how do we put together a competent team? Now, my favorite scene of actually all time in that movie is when he breaks up the team and he sends Jeremy Giambi to the Phillies. He sends Carlos Pena to Detroit, and he walks in to Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was great in that movie. Played the most weary manager, just fed up with it. Art Howe, and just totally beaten down. And he tells Art Howe, he sits down, you can't start Pena at first tonight because you got to start Hattiesburg. Art Howe goes, as long as I'm the manager, I'll play who I want. And he says, I'm just saying, you can't start Pena at first. I just traded him to the Tigers. I love that.
Remember when they're at Hattiesburg's house when they called up?
Yep.
And said, how hard can it be? It's very hard.
Tell him, Ron, that was Ron Washington, who's been a coach in the major leagues.
Yeah.
And he's, it's extremely hard.
And then he says, well, what will the fans think? And Ron Washington goes, maybe we could get one of them to play first base. Immediately takes that line and runs with it. It's hilarious. Great movie. Kris?
Love that movie, by the way, because it brings in the analytics versus the old school. And a lot of us that grew up with old school, managing by your gut, batting average mattered, right? And it switched, right? When you figured out that on-base percentage was important, slugging percentage was important. You didn't have to hit 300 to be effective if your on-base percentage was 350 or higher. So, yeah, I love that movie too. So, my favorite I picked was The Natural. I grew up watching that movie, loved everything about it. And like Brian, there was a book. And I am actually glad I saw the movie before I read the book, because growing up watching that movie with Robert Redford about the phenom who doesn't make it and then works his way back and at an older age finally makes the roster and has an impact. And that someone said, well, you got to read the book. I said, well, yeah, that'd be cool. And then I read the book, and the ending, I don't know if you've ever read the ending of the book, The Natural, but he strikes out in the book, and it's got a totally different feel. But apparently they did some screening on that, and no one liked the end of that movie with Robert Redford striking out. So they put in that he hits the home run, hits the lights, the music, the theme song, and it really took off. So love that baseball movie because I like the old school stuff. But I also asked Jeff if I could take the liberty.
One comment about what you just said.
Okay.
I think the all-time great intro to a World Series baseball game is the night after Kirk Gibson hits the home run, and they intersplice it into that hitting the light stanchions.
Yeah.
And the movement and all that kind of stuff. I think that was classic. Okay, go.
Okay, so I asked Jeff if I could put together a lineup card, 9 spots for 9 scenes of baseball movies. Just scenes, maybe a 30-second to 1-minute clip of a baseball movie. So here we go. Leading off from The Rookie, the baseball movie where the high school teacher, Jimmy Morris, gets spotted by a Tampa Bay Devil Rays scout, ends up pitching in the minors. And the scene I picked from that was he finally gets called from the bullpen to run in to make his pitching debut at the age of 40. Was he 40?
I think he was.
Yeah. Late 30s, 40, older. And great movie based on a true story. Batting second is the scene from The Natural when he hits the home run and he hits a foul ball and breaks Wonder Boy, if you remember that. And the bat's, it's in 2 pieces. And he looks around, and Bobby, who he had made a bat with, and Bobby runs up. He's the bat boy, and he says, pick me out a winner, Bobby. Bobby runs back to the dugout and picks the bat that they made together called the Savoy Special. Brings him the Savoy Special, hits the game-winning home run. Batting third, the all-time scene from a baseball movie, Would You Like to Have a Catch? To his dad at the end of Field of Dreams. What a moment. Everything in that movie built up to the moment where his dad shows up on the field and they get to have a catch. Batting cleanup from Major League, the Ricky Vaughn entrance at the end of the movie, which started the entrance songs for relief pitchers coming out of the bullpen. They played Wild Thing. That's what started that trend. Ricky Vaughn comes in. He strikes out in the top of the inning, strikes out the Yankees cleanup hitter to give them a chance in the bottom. Batting fifth, it's the rivalry game from Sandlot, where they get into the verbal spat between all the players that were on the Little League team that had the uniforms and for the better part of town, and they meet and they call each other names, and then they decide to meet again. And of course, the Sandlot boys beat them in their little scrimmage. batting 6th from a league of their own. There's no crying in baseball. So the outfielder comes in and had missed her cutoff, and coach just gives it to her right in front of everybody, and she starts crying, and then you get the famous "There's no crying in baseball." Batting 7th from the movie For Love of the Game, when the catcher comes out and the pitcher, who's played by Kevin Costner, doesn't realize he's pitching a perfect game, and the catcher says, "We don't stink right now. We're going to be the best team out here because of you," and they finish off and get the last 3 outs. Batting 8th from Bull Durham. Anything that travels that far needs a stewardess. So Kevin Costner's catching the game, and he shakes him off, and he's pitching a 2-hit shutout. And he goes, "You believe he's shaking me off?" So he tells the hitter that the curveball's coming. Of course, the guy hits it over the bull in the right field, and Costner walks out to him and says, "Man, anything that travels that far should have a stewardess." And finally, from your movie, batting 9th from Moneyball, the pinch hit homer by Scott Hatteberg. Who trivia, that game was against the Royals. The Oakland A's held a 11-0 lead. The Royals came back and tied it, and then Hatteberg walked him off.
There's a lot of Royals connections to Moneyball because Mark Teahan was the prototypical draft choice of that era and eventually was traded to the Royals. But the Royals, made a comeback all the way. Mike Sweeney hits the 3-run bomb to get him within 1 run. So there were a lot of Royals connections with the A's at that time, and the A's just did it a lot better than us until we finally got them back in 2014 in the wild card game.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting in Moneyball. You know, they talk about all the position players, but what they don't say is Oakland A's had a lights-out pitching staff.
Mulder and Zito.
Yeah, they were
Hudson.
They were tremendous. You know,
Tejada at shortstop, MVP.
Yeah. Steroid. I mean,
they were
Tejada,
pretty good.
Yeah.
They had a right fielder that they got from somebody.
David Justice.
Well, they had Jermaine Dye.
Oh yeah, that's
I
right.
played on that team.
Yeah.
I mean, and we gave them for a bag of balls or something, some shortstop.
Underrated movie, too, about the analytics versus old schools, Trouble with the Curve. Not a lot of people saw it. It's Clint Eastwood, but he's an old scout. His daughter is coming up and kind of has grown up with her dad being a scout. And, that's a good one about old school scouts versus new analytics, too.
Okay, guys, it's time for the lights to come up in the theater. Time for the fireworks to explode after the game and the long walk back to our cars. Any last thoughts as we leave this scene? What is it about baseball?
Well, I can tell you for me, going back to 2014-15 Royals and the type of team they had, I yearn for those days again because it was just contact hitting, keep the line moving, great defense, blazing speed, lights out bullpen. It was consistent. But what I thought was interesting is that in 2014, the Royals had a 1.9% chance of making the World Series. They had come off a pretty good year the year before, 1.9. Going into 2015, you know what their odds were to win the World Series? Less, 1.3%. And they just went out there and took names all year long. That was a tremendous season. So, you know, as we look at this year's Royals, baseball, the beauty of baseball is it's so unpredictable with what can happen with a team that gets a little bit of momentum or a little something good happens to them or they get a nice little streak, or on the opposite side of that, if you go through that 10-game losing streak, it can wreck your season. I think that's why baseball is kind of romantic in that way. You just don't know what's going to happen. Try to assemble the best pieces you can, and then if stuff kind of falls into place, magic happens.
Getting the big game and Bucky.
You know, it's just different. Yeah, I mean, it's just different. I mean, football, you can kind of see it coming sometimes. Even if it's a team that was not very good the year before, you can see some of the changes. Boy, they really this and that. Because with baseball, if it comes together, it can just be almost lightning in a bottle, but a long time.
You know, you think of baseball, there's about 240 pitches in every game. And anything can happen on any one of those pitches. You also have 9 guys in the field, and only one guy can see the whole field, and that's the catcher. And then you have the pitcher who controls everything because he has the ball. So it's a round ball, a round bat, and try to hit it square. There's just so many things that can happen in this game. And just sitting here tonight and all the memories just sparked a lot of really great feel about the game. So thank you.
It's got the drama and the tension, and my daughter was watching it the other night in that close game. She goes, I don't like it when it's like this. It's so hard to get that final run. You know, it's just, it holds you, grips you.
It is, and going to the ballpark is so much fun. It always has been fun for me to take my wife or take my kids because there's something relaxed about going to a baseball game. There's not a lot of urgency. There's high moments and low moments, but you can have a conversation. You can do other things during a baseball game that you can't do at other sports. And it's just, for a lot of us that grew up with baseball and playing wiffle ball or home run derby in the backyard, it's just part of our lives that probably going to be that for the rest of the ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening tonight to our talk about baseball, and we love it, and it's going to go on all summer long. Get out to the ballpark, local games, go see an NCMC game, go see a high school Trenton Bulldog game, get to a Royals game. You won't regret it. It's great drama, and we love talking about it tonight. So thank you from Show Me Sports Legacies.